sometimes controversial, always politically incorrect, and pro-life without exception, without compromise, and without apology. It's the Pro-Life America podcast with your hosts, Sarah Waits and the president of Life Dynamics, Mark Crutcher.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. As you heard, I'm Mark Crutcher, and lurking nearby is Sarah Waits.
Hello, everyone.
The Republicans in Congress have proposed legislation that would require a baby who survives an abortion to be given medical treatment. To show you how far down the moral abyss the Democrats have gone, they are literally labeling this legislation extreme.
More than 200 House Democrats voted against it. Only one House Democrat voted in favor of it, and it's a guy from Texas.
That shows you how godless these moral degenerates in the Democratic Party have become. The Democrat Party, they used to be decent people, even if you disagreed with them. And I can remember even in the late 60s, for example, people like Scoop Jackson or Hubert Humphrey.
That's a good name, Scoop Jackson.
Scoop Jackson. Yeah.
I like that.
They were decent guys. You might disagree with them. I mean, Hubert Humphrey was a hardcore liberal, but he was a decent guy.
Well, hardcore liberal then versus hardcore liberal now means two very different things.
They're just communists now. That's all the Democratic Party is now. They're completely taken over by every sort of moral degenerate, social misfit that you can imagine.
I want to cover some of the arguments that some of these Democrats use to justify this, because this is just completely off the wall. So Congressman Jerry Nadler, he said that getting treatment for babies that have survived abortions would not be conducive to the, quote, health and survival of the infant. Representative Jan Schakowsky made a similar argument, saying that transferring a struggling infant to the hospital could be detrimental to the life of that baby.
Like they're concerned about that baby.
Imagine we have somebody who's in the back of an ambulance who's been shot. They are struggling.
Right.
Do we say, I don't think it'd be conducive to their life to take them to the emergency room. We should just let them die.
Let's just dump them out here on the curb.
They're bleeding out. Let's just let them die. That's the more compassionate thing than trying to get them help at the emergency room.
Let me tell you what this boils down to. We heard this years ago back during the debate over partial birth abortion. When Democrats were opposing a ban on partial birth abortion. They tried to dance all around it. But some of the pro-lifers in the Senate especially held their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And when they were backed into a corner, their basic argument was a woman goes into an abortion clinic for a dead baby. She's entitled to a dead baby. Even if the baby comes out alive. Because somebody asked, I think it was Rick Santorum, if I'm not mistaken, asked one of these pro-aborts, let's say that the baby's partially outside the womb and it's partial birth abortion, but they're slippery.
And they happen to just slide out
and
or
it
fall
happens
out.
to slide out before they push the scissors into the back of the head and kill it. Now is the baby entitled to medical care? And this woman said no. And when he pressed her on it, her basic argument was, the woman comes into a abortion clinic to get a dead baby. She's entitled to a dead baby. And they're still singing that song right now.
Yeah. There is an argument by freshman Democrat Representative Hillary Schulten. She refers to herself as a pro-choice Christian, air quotes.
She's a liar and a heretic.
She said, when I read the scripture, I turn to passages and I'm guided by passages like Jeremiah 1:5, which states, I knew you before I formed you and placed you in your mother's womb. It doesn't say the government's womb or the speaker's womb. It says the mother's womb. I believe life is precious, but I reject the idea that if I embrace the sanctity of life, I must also be forced to invite the federal government in to regulate it. What? She says that I'm a Christian. I believe it is a baby. Life is sacred. God is the author of life. However, I don't believe that the government should be obligated to protect that life. I mean,
it's mind-boggling.
What other lives that she believes are sacred that she believes the government shouldn't protect?
But
the elderly?
This gets to
you and me?
This gets to the fundamental issue, though. This woman honestly believes, or I assume she honestly believes, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt, that you can be a pro-choice Christian, that there is such a thing. She's a liar and she's a heretic.
Well, she has the gall to quote a Bible verse that says, I created you and I put you in the womb for a purpose, and then turns around to use that verse and say, but I believe we can reject that.
Well, what this woman is basically saying, and what all of these so-called pro-choice Democrat politicians are saying is that when their claimed religious views conflict with their political future,
Yeah.
it's their religion they will abandon. That's literally what
When
they're
religion
saying.
clashes against politics, yeah.
Yeah, when my politics clashes with my religion, I'll give up my religion. If God can't trust them, why should we?
Yeah.
Why should we put them in office if God can't trust them? And by the way, all of this is coming about at a time when there's new studies out, and we can give links to them here at the end of the show,
Yeah, I'll have the links in the description for each
showing
episode.
that this issue of babies being born alive after abortions is much more common than the abortion industry has always said it is.
Yeah, new research conducted by the Abortion Survivors Network estimates that 1,900 children are potentially surviving abortions each year in the U.S. They're basing this off of some data from the United States and also Canadian data. Canadian data shows that a 0.21 failure rate for abortion, meaning that for every 1,000 abortions performed, 2.1 infants survive. And of course, that 1,900 children figure that the Abortion Survivors Network is referring to does not include those who survived the abortion pill, which, as we talked about last episode, the abortion industry believes is the future of abortion in America.
I don't care what somebody's position on abortion is. If they think that if this baby comes out alive, we still have the right to kill it. If they believe it's extreme to oppose that, these people have mental health problems. Not only are they immoral, and
It makes you question what else they find extreme.
I can't imagine that you'd find anything more extreme than this. And if people want to see how this plays out, again, I want to refer them to the interview that we did with 3 abortion clinic employees in Houston.
I'll have the link in the description.
Worked for an abortionist named Carpin.
Here in Texas.
Yep, he does late-term abortions. And they said it was common, almost a daily occurrence, that they'd have babies born alive and that he would twist the heads off of them or stick instruments into the soft spot of the head or strangle them. Sometimes he'd strangle them. Sometimes they would drown them.
It's awful, the things that they describe. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're sitting here watching it. So if you're somebody out there who's listening to this and you call yourself pro-choice and you think this is extreme, I want to really urge you to call and let us put you on the show next week. We will be happy to do that, and we will treat you with, I don't know, respect, because I don't have any respect for you if this is your position, but we will not treat you
Horribly.
Horribly, right. You're more than welcome
We
to
will
come on
have
here.
a intellectual debate with you.
I want to hear your argument for why it's extreme to save one of these babies. And understand something. They'll say, I've even heard these people, we heard it back in the partial birth abortion debate. They're saying this affects the health of women. Well, wait a minute. Once the baby's out, how does that affect the health of the woman?
Yeah.
It doesn't affect her health any more than something they might do to me would affect their health. It's outrageous. Anyway, please, if you're pro-choice, I'll use your terminology to show you how nice we're going to be. If you're pro-choice and you think this is extreme, I humbly ask you to call and let us know, and we will put you on the show. I want to hear you defend this.
Yeah.
Of course, the fact is, A, they're not going to call, because B, they know they can't defend it.
Yeah. How do you defend that?
You can't. The only people you could defend this to are other godless leftists like yourself. That's the only people you could ever defend this to.
Yeah.
There's another issue that's really cropping up here, is the issue of abortion tourism.
Yeah, and I wrote about how California is basically setting themselves up to be a abortion tourist destination in the last issue of the Pro-Life Voice newsletter that we have. So if you haven't gone and signed up for that, you really should. There's articles in there that you can't get anywhere else, with a lot of really good information.
But, you know, we predicted this years and years ago, that once Roe was overturned, that doesn't end abortion. What it means is that you have 50 battles to fight, and that there would be states
Like New York, California.
in Illinois that are setting up basically cottage industries. They want to become the Auschwitz of America, put these big, gigantic death camps in these places.
And if you think this sounds crazy, I'll just give a couple of pieces of information about California, what they've done. Because you've seen a lot of states that have been voting to enshrine or change the law in their state regarding abortion since Roe was overturned. California, at the time that I wrote that article, had 15 bills that were moving through the legislature based on recommendations from the California Future of Abortion Council, which is abortion industry players such as NARAL and Planned Parenthood. So they're advising law changes for California. One of them would allow nurse practitioners to do first trimester abortions without a doctor's supervision. Another one will allow them to open their doors to doctors who have been punished in other states for abortion-related offenses. So basically, they're widening the net.
They're lowering the standards to widen the net.
Because they don't have tons of people who want to do abortion. Shocking, right? The other thing that they're doing to get more people to do abortions, they had a bill called AB 1918, which would establish the California Reproductive Health Service Corps. It's an organization that would be responsible for recruiting and training, quote, reproductive health care professionals. They would also oversee scholarships and loan repayment for those who attend a, quote, reproductive health professional school in the past in exchange for a 3-year term of obligated service at a California court-approved site, meaning in exchange for working in an abortion clinic, they'll pay for your college. Now, in a state that has tremendous debt and has so many money problems, right, they have allocated around $200 million to reproductive health. $20 million of that is earmarked for scholarships and loan repayment to healthcare providers that commit to providing reproductive healthcare services.
Well, I don't know how many people know this. I didn't know this until recently. I was listening to a Republican congressman from California talking about this, and I found it astonishing. I don't know if you knew this or not, Sarah. Nationwide, of all the money that's given to poverty-stricken people, a third of the money that's given out is given out in California for the whole nation.
United States. That's impressive. I mean, I knew that California gave out a lot of money, but I didn't know it was a third. That's an incredible amount of money.
The place is going bankrupt, and yet they're looking at legislation now that says they would pay, if let's say a woman in Texas wants an abortion, they would pay her airfare to California, her airfare back to Texas, and do the abortion on her for free, and the state of California would pick up the bill.
Yeah, they are setting themselves up to be an abortion destination.
And they're saying they're doing that.
Yeah.
It's not like we're saying they're doing that. They're saying that they're doing that.
And I can only assume that the reason that they're doing it, besides they want to pat themselves on the back, you know, in the name of social justice or whatnot, is I think that they're thinking that becoming an abortion tourism state can help solve some of their money woes. With all the money that they're spending, I don't see how that's possible, but... Well,
as we know, the state is bleeding population. People moving to other states, and we're seeing them show up here in Texas, of course, and that's bringing its own problems with it. But you're deluding yourself. If you think the American people are so pro-abortion, they're going to say, oh, let's move to California.
Where the houses are outrageous.
Right.
The living conditions have gotten so bad. But they have legal abortion, so we'll go move there.
Yeah. We're so sold out to the abortion lobby that we want to be near the hub of it. And so they're going to make California into this cottage industry for abortion. And New York and Illinois are doing the same thing. And there'll be others.
Yeah.
But we're going to fight this. And as you know, we're putting together some programs right now. I think that will help fight this abortion tourism thing. But it's like killing the babies outside the womb when they survive. This is another example of how godless these moral degenerates in the abortion industry are.
Well, and it also shows people that why we have to have a national thing banning abortion, because as long as you have patchwork states that allow for abortion, abortion really isn't gone. I mean, people can just get on the highway and go to another state.
Well, look, we have to fight the battles that are in front of us. We have to fight whatever battle we can at the time.
Yeah.
But the ultimate solution to this has to be a personhood amendment to the U.S. Constitution, or a personhood recognition. It doesn't have to be an amendment. Just a recognition by the Supreme Court that the unborn child is a person.
Under the law.
And the minute that you do that, this thing is over. You don't have abortion tourism. You don't have babies being, basically, if you think about it for a minute, what's happening is these babies are being extradited for execution from one state to the next. It's no different than if you extradite somebody from California to Texas or Texas to California to face the death penalty.
Well, you know, I was thinking about all this stuff that's coming up in the different states and the battle over abortion, and specifically as it relates to chemical abortions and that sort of thing in state laws, where you have one state banning it, one state allowing it, one state whose laws are kind of murky. It reminds me a lot of early America and slavery, because each state had very different laws and regulations regarding slavery, and people thought, okay, well, our state is fine because we have these laws. But what happened was each and every state's laws impacted the other.
Well, states were either allowed into the union or not allowed into the union based on what their position on slavery was going to be.
Yeah.
Are they going to be a free state or a slave state?
Because you're fooling yourself if you think that an issue like slavery or abortion is just going to be confined to your state and it's not going to have an impact on the states around you.
Well, using the slavery analogy, a good example of that is the Fugitive Slave Law.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fugitive Slave Act, I'm sorry, where the federal government came in and said, if states escape from a slave state
If slaves escape, yeah.
into a non-slave state, and you give them sanctuary or you help them or whatever, you're violating federal law. So they could arrest you and arrest the slave and send them back to the slave state. You couldn't help them. But anyway, this thing with the abortion pill you mentioned, that's also creating, as we talked about in last week's show, a situation with the pharmacies. And now you're having these pharmacies come out here and say, and they're dancing all around this thing. They don't know what to do because what kind of trouble are they going to be in?
The reason why people are dancing around it is that FDA's pharmacy certification requires that pharmacies track shipments and keep records of prescribers, recipients, and lot numbers of each drug dispensed, meaning that they're tracking who's prescribing it, who's receiving it, and where the drug is coming from. And if you have a state, let's say Texas, that says that chemical abortions are outlawed, and then a state such as California that says chemical abortions are great, and you have a doctor in California doing a telemed abortion with a woman in Texas, sending her the drugs, could then Texas come around and try to prosecute the doctor in California for doing that because they broke Texas law?
Well, we talked about this issue of whether someone can cross state lines. So let's say a woman in Texas wants an abortion and she travels to Colorado or Kansas to get an abortion.
Yeah.
Has she violated the law? And my argument has been that you're not going to be able to prosecute that.
Yeah.
I think the best analogy to it is casino gambling. Casino gambling is illegal in Texas.
Yeah.
But it's very legal in Oklahoma and Louisiana. And both of those states have big casinos
Right on the other side of the border.
right on the state line with Texas. So they're poaching people from Texas to go gambling. If casino gambling is illegal in Texas, I don't think you can prosecute somebody for
Driving to
casino
Oklahoma,
gambling if they drive to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the same situation here, unfortunately. But when you get into this deal about abortion pills sold at a pharmacy at CVS, is a pharmacist at CVS in Texas going to fulfill a prescription written by an abortionist in California to a woman who might live in California? She might live in Colorado. She might live in Texas. Who knows? She just shows up with a prescription. Are they going to fill that prescription?
Yeah.
Because I think they would be leaving themselves open. It's not like the casino gambling situation. This is occurring inside the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Or inside whatever state it is, Alabama or whoever that's outlawed abortion. So this is going to get dicey.
Yeah.
And the other issue is, too, we know that the abortion industry is not adhering to the protocol for the distribution and dispensement of RU46 that Danco and the other manufacturers of this stuff say you have to do. For example, just one small example, it's supposed to be dispensed in 600 milligram dosages, but they're giving it out in 200s. Now, if you give it out in 200 milligram dosage rather than 600, you increase the chance you'll have an incomplete abortion or a missed abortion.
Which means you have to follow it up with a mechanical abortion.
With a mechanical abortion.
Or a surgical abortion, however you choose to refer to it.
Now what do you do if you're in Texas?
You're traveling to another state.
I guess you are. I don't know what you're going to do. But the question then becomes, what responsibility does the pharmacist have to see that if you dispense this drug, that the person who takes it in the right manner?
Well, I think the abortion industry has been selling it in lower doses in order to maximize profit.
Right.
But if you have a physician or even, say, an abortionist writing a prescription and she has to get it from Walgreens and he's not actually getting that money for the dosages, maybe they're going to follow the normal dosage amounts.
But maybe the prescription is for 200 milligram dosage.
Yeah. Well, and I want to mention that these big chains, you can tell, are really committed. So CVS and Walgreens, they've released statements saying that they're going to do it. So CVS said, we plan to seek certification to dispense the drug. And then you have Walgreens who said that we are working through the registration, necessary training of our pharmacists, as well as evaluating our pharmacy network in terms of where we can normally dispense products that have extra FDA requirements. And we'll dispense these consistent with federal and state laws, which is, yes, we will, but maybe not in certain states. But there's a recent lawsuit that's going up right now from a woman in Texas named Robin Strader, and she is suing CVS for discontinuing the religious accommodation for all employees, protecting them from prescribing birth control pills and abortifacients.
And she worked at CVS.
Yes, she's a nurse practitioner who worked at CVS. She had a 6.5-year accommodation from CVS without a single complaint, allowing her to transfer prescriptions that were birth control and abortion to associates. It didn't come up much. In that period, she said that maybe 5 people a year total, and she would just transfer it to the other nurse practitioner who alternated shifts or the nearby Minute Clinic, which was 1.5 miles away, approximately. So not a huge thing.
So nobody was denied.
No.
No.
Absolutely not. So she had that accommodation for 6.5 years. They ended that, and they started pressuring her to prescribe the pills. She refused, and when she was fired on October 31st, 2021. So they discontinued the accommodation in August 2021. They fired her in October 2021. She's also claiming in the lawsuit that CVS and its subsidiaries fired at least 3 other CVS Minute Clinic nurse practitioners in Florida, Kansas, and Virginia because of their religious beliefs. However, in the lawsuit, the individuals are not named. And so she is seeking for accommodation of religious beliefs for all CVS employees, and she wants her job back and financial compensation.
Obviously, hope she gets it.
This, to me, seems like CVS is preparing themselves to be a major distributor of abortion drugs if they're ending religious exemptions and saying all of our employees have to prescribe this.
Yep.
We talked last episode about how CVS and Walgreens and others are buying up these primary care places and basically making themselves now not just to be a pharmacy, but providing the doctors along with it. And if you're telling your employees you have to prescribe these medications, you have to fill the prescription, it seems to me that this is the next step for them.
Yeah. Taking this one step up further, let's say that CVS says, this is more trouble than what we're willing to go through. We got women suing us now. We're just not going to prescribe it at all. You might have the state come in and say, no, you have to. In order to keep your license as a pharmacist, if it's a legal drug, you have to prescribe it. Or you have to fulfill the orders.
I don't know. Maybe. There's some talk about what this could mean in the future. Currently, the FDA does not require that pharmacies carry the drug. They're just saying that they are able to, if they want to, if they go through certain steps.
But we've already seen where if the government says you're able to do this, but people don't do it, they'll come back and say, now you're required to.
And like we covered last episode, the Biden administration has ordered basically his top people to find ways for chemical abortions to be distributed as widely as possible.
Oh, like I've said, they're going to have them at bubble packs at the 7-Eleven store, right there beside the Slurpees and the lotto tickets. They'll be hanging out there on the checkout counter. That's what they're hoping for. That's what they're shooting toward.
You think it sounds crazy, but they have Plan B vending machines now.
In colleges.
Yeah.
Yeah. The battle goes on. We're in a stage of it right now that I think most pro-lifers never thought we would be in. But here we are.
Well, there's a number of things that are popping up right now that it'll be interesting to see the direction that it takes, because not only will that have a huge impact on how we fight, but it'll have a good impact on where the battle is headed.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, that's all I've got.
That's all I have. If you like the show, make sure you follow the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We're on most platforms out there. And also, if you have an idea or question about abortion that you want addressed, go ahead and go to lifedynamics.com/podcast. We have a form right there on the page. Submit your show suggestion. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about or discuss or argue about,
Absolutely. And
me versus
again,
Mark.
I want to remind you, if you're pro-choice and you heard our little segment here on baby surviving abortion.
And we do have pro-choice listeners. They say hi to us occasionally.
Yeah. I challenge you to call in and let us put you on the show so you can defend the killing of these babies outside the womb. I want to hear what your argument is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
That's all I have. Until next Thursday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight.
We're here to win.
Because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.